Now, for those of you who are just joining, welcome to our Migrate a WordPress site to the JAMstack webinar. I'd like to introduce today's presenter, who's really awesome. Very excited about this. Jason Langsdorf is a principal developer experience engineer at Netlify and is the host of Learn with Jason, which is a live streamed video show where he pairs with people in the community to learn something new in 90 minutes. He's passionate about building healthy, efficient teams and systems, and he's done his best to positively influence the community, leadership, and technical health of open source and companies, including Gatsby and IBM. He lives in Portland, Oregon, and, I take it away, Jason.
Hello, everyone. Let me get my desktop shared. This one. Yep. Okay. Can everyone see my desktop? All right. So we already have a question comes in. What is the JAMstack? And so I thought I would take a second to just really quickly introduce the concept before we dive into moving a WordPress site there. So the JAMstack is it's a software architecture pattern. So if you're familiar with concepts like monoliths or microservices or the MVC pattern, JAMstack is a pattern like that. What we're effectively trying to do when we set up the JAMstack is we are attempting to generate all of our assets at build time. We want to make sure that we are that we're not relying on a server to create things. We're creating everything ahead of time, and we're putting those assets somewhere that someone can view. So effectively generating down to static HTML and CSS and JavaScript wherever possible. We then want to put those assets onto a CDN, or you can use any web hosting you want. But the reason that a CDN is preferable is that a CDN is globally distributed, which means that you're going to be able to put the files closer to the people who are trying to request them. And it gives you better resilience against denial of service attacks, or if you hit the front page of Hacker News or Reddit or whatever, one of those places that generates a ton of traffic, a CDN is going to keep your site up. You also want to be able to ship like atomic versions of the site. And what I mean by atomic is that when you build your site, you're developing a completely independent version of the site that can be shipped anywhere as a folder effectively. And the reason that's important is that if something goes wrong, you are able to just swap the folders back. Okay, so the latest build didn't work. That's okay. Use the previous build, and you're just changing to the previous built folder instead of having to figure out how to roll back parts of the server or roll back the database or all these things that can go wrong with dynamic apps. And then the last thing is that dynamic interactions are going to happen via APIs and serverless functions. We're not going to get too deep into that today, but I do have a lot of content in that space, both on front-end masters. So let's see this one. We can find. Oh boy, I can find it quickly. Usually, let's see. Here's me. So I have courses on Introduction to the JAMstack, which is going to be a full day course covering a lot of the foundational material here. And then I've also got some courses on Gatsby, which Gatsby is what we're going to be using today. So let me throw this into the chat. I'll also throw this JAMstack article into the chat. So from here, I think what we want to do is we want to move a WordPress site to be JAMstack compatible. Oh yeah, Mohammed has a great question. JAMstack seems like the old technologies we were using. Yeah, it is. I actually cover that in this article. And specifically, this is actually kind of what we're going for, right? Because one of the things that happened was early web development was just writing HTML into a file. And then you would drag that to an FTP server, and that would be on the internet somewhere. This is the GeoCities approach, or if you were using something like HostGator or Bluehost, or all these really these kind of older hosts where you would get a FTP client, and then you would drag your files onto it to get them live. That's effectively what we're doing. We're building some files and then we're putting them on a server somewhere. Where it changes is that the power of what we can do with the JAMstack, because we're using pre-processing, because we're using build tools or static site generators like Eleventy or Nuxt or Gatsby or whatever whatever our preferred framework is, we can do these incredibly complex dynamic sites while still having that same simple workflow of I write some code and then I put that code somewhere. And that's one of the things that we're really proud of at Netlify of making easy, which we'll show in a minute, is that we want you to be able to write some code, push it to your preferred Git management tool, GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, and we will automatically take those files live for you. We'll run your build step and take those static files live. So that's what we're really trying to make fast here, right? So yeah, that's the Andrea makes a great point that the app logic in a JAMstack app is going to be just limited to an API. And so you're going to be able to make calls to APIs through JavaScript, async, all those good things. And that puts you in this really strong position where your front end and your back end teams get decoupled. They're no longer dependent on each other, where you have to work in the same code base or where the work of the back end team blocks the front end team or vice versa. This is it's a really, really nice workflow. So with that being said, what we're going to do today is we are going to stand up a new WordPress site. If you have an existing one, you'll be able to use that. But we're going to stand up a new WordPress site. We're going to use DigitalOcean. And the reason we're going to use DigitalOcean, there are a few reasons, but my main reason is that I really like the model of DigitalOcean. It's a one-click thing. And the other thing is that DigitalOcean is being very cool, and they're going to give us $100 of credit. So any of you who wants to sign up for DigitalOcean today, if you use this link that I just dropped into the chat, you'll get $100 in free credit. Now, a WordPress site managed through DigitalOcean using the approach we're going to use today will cost you about $6 a month with backups. So that means that you can run this for almost a year. Trying to do math in my head right now. You can run it for over a year. And it's like on this credit. So you'll be able to really try out this flow and really see how it's going with no risk, because your Netlify project will probably fit on the free tier, and your DigitalOcean credit will cover your WordPress hosting. So to do that, we're going to come into the DigitalOcean dashboard. So I'm just on my DigitalOcean dashboard, and I'm in a project called Webinar, and I'm going to go to the marketplace over here. And in the marketplace, oh, is it a 60-day trial for the, I didn't actually check the details. Oh, okay. So yes, you'll have a couple months. I apologize. That's me misunderstanding the fine print. But yeah, that $100 will let you get started and give some give this a pretty solid try before you have to make a financial commitment to it. And I definitely do think this is something that's worth trying, because especially if you've been managing WordPress sites using PHP templates and the kind of monolithic structure, this is a really nice, I'm a really big fan of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm in the marketplace here on DigitalOcean, and I'm going to search for WordPress. Here. And we have a one-click WordPress that's going to set up all the things that we need. So it sets up PHP, MySQL. It's going to come with Git. It's got certbot so that we get automatic SSL. All sorts of good things happening here. So let's create that droplet. And I'm going to come down to the $5 a month, because that's all I need. And I will choose a data center close to me. I'm on the West Coast, so I'll choose San Francisco. I'm going to use my SSH keys, and I've got, let's see, that one. So let's do the droplet. I'm going to call this JAMstack webinar. Okay. I am going to enable backups, because I want that to be, if anything goes wrong with my WordPress site, I want to be able to roll back so that I don't lose all of my data. So let's create this. Okay. So it's creating my site here. And now, once this finishes, it takes a second because we're provisioning a new server. Let's see here. So there's a question: is this similar to what GitHub Pages does? So GitHub Pages is a great example of the JAMstack. When you push up files to a GitHub Pages site and it serves those from GitHub CDN, that's a JAMstack site. So it's not similar to it. It is that. It's the same thing. So let's see. Would you recommend that we follow along or just watch me do my thing? I would say it's probably going to be easiest to just watch. I have an article that will walk through all of these pieces. Let me drop that in the chat. I'll show you the article as well. So there's an article here, and then there's also a video version of this. Let me get the link for that. Here. I think it's this one. Double check. Oh boy, come on, Wi-Fi. Is the signal okay for y'all? Are you getting a delay or anything? There we go. That is the right one. So here's a link. If you want to get a video version of this, this is an Egghead course that I put together where it steps through each thing. These videos are also embedded in this article here, so you can watch them in place. So that, let's see. All right. So from here, we are ready to get started. So I'm going to set up this WordPress site. And to get started, we have already, let's see, it already enabled the firewall for us. It already set the MySQL root password. So for us to create it, we can log into the droplet via SSH, right? And it should have my SSH key because I set that up. So let's clear here. And I'm going to SSH root at, okay. All right, and so I'm in, and now I need to set my domain and my subdomain name. Let's set this to be, let's go webinar.lwj.dev. I can set that up pretty quickly. And then this, let's make this here. And I need to pick a password. Okay, so we're going to use Let's Encrypt. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm configuring WordPress. So I've chosen my username and my password. This is how I'm going to log in. And then I've given my blog a title. And now I'm going to use Let's Encrypt to create a certificate so that we can serve this securely. This first step for provisioning WordPress on DigitalOcean does need to be done on the command line. However, it is not required. Like if you want to configure WordPress the old way, where you drag the WordPress into whatever shared host and then configure through the UI, you can absolutely do that as well. That is 100% something that you can do. This is just, for me, this is a nice fast way to get things done. Let's see, I already get those emails. So let's go with just the one. We don't want to do a www. Oh, I need to set up the domain name first. Whoops. All right, so let's go to, got my domains over here. So I'm going to just jump in real quick and configure this one. Where am I logged into? I'm in the wrong account is why that's not working. Let's swap over to here. All right, bear with me just a second because I got to configure a domain real quick. But we are going to do this full step. All right, so I'm in my domains here. and I'm going to go into my DNS, and I want to add a what was it? What did I call this thing? It was webinar.lwj.dev. All right, so I need to create a webinar domain. So we'll call this webinar, and I'm going to point it here. So let's add that. All right. And so now when I come in here, I can try this again because let's see, I need to run that again because it didn't work. I think I can just run certbot to do that again. Yep, so I'm running certbot. We're going to go in. It should work this time because I've actually configured. We'll see how fast it goes. There we go. So that worked. And now we're going to redirect all traffic. Okay, that's done. I have a certificate. We are ready to rock and roll, which means that if I go to webinar.lwj.dev, we have a site, and I can now log into it at WP admin. All right, and can log in with the username and password I just created. And now what I'm going to do is, rather than trying to generate a bunch of content, I'm going to attempt to I'm going to just import some content that I already created. So let's see here. So a few questions. Can I create a WordPress site for free as I don't have an international credit card? Any WordPress site where you can control the plugins that you install will work. It is a question of whether or not you can install, like the challenge is that we have to install one plugin from the command line because, or by dragging and dropping it into FTP. So in theory, yes, you can, but it would depend on the host. So let's direct this work here. We're going to download and import file attachments and submit. Okay, and so now we have some posts, right? And we have some pages. Okay, perfect. All good. And if we come back out to look at our site, we can see now that we've got some basic info, homepage, all that good stuff. All right, cool. Now what we haven't done is we haven't set up like menus. So I'm going to set up this main menu here. We'll set this up as the, let's see, the desktop horizontal. How about that? We'll save that one. And then we're also going to set up, I need to control the home page. So the static page is going to be home, and the post page is going to be blog. Now, again, this is all just stuff that I'm setting up so that we have a kind of functional site here. And so we can see now we've got our home page, an about page, and a blog page that shows our posts. Okay, all good. So now we can actually start moving through and building out this post. So I'm going to first install two plugins that we need. So we're going to use WordPress GraphQL. And WP GraphQL is a really powerful plugin that takes WordPress and turns it into an API that we can use to access all the content. We don't need authentication because our WordPress site is exposing this content publicly. So we can just use WordPress GraphQL and get all of the public content. You can authenticate to get private stuff, but we don't need that for this particular site. Let's see. Rob has a question. Is there a CMS front end that helps maintain a WordPress-like user experience or better one? Better is a very subjective term. So what I will say is that there are a whole lot of CMS options out there. They range from, like, Ghost is fairly similar to WordPress, but it's built in Node. So if you're a JavaScript developer, it's a little bit easier to maintain. There is Sanity, which is very developer focused and extremely flexible. You can do just about anything with it. There are more API driven ones like Strappy. You've got things like Prismic and Forestry and Tina CMS. There are tons and tons and tons of options. And whether or not it's the right option for you is going to depend so much on your particular use case. One of the reasons that I like WordPress as a CMS is because it's a very standardized experience. Most, like something like just so much of the internet is powered by WordPress. And because of that, a lot of people are already familiar with this editing interface. If I want to create a new post, I know I can go back here and I hit add new, and then I can, just start typing to get this post. And, that is a really, really powerful flow. So I like that. What I don't particularly like about WordPress is the front end development experience. So what we're doing today is we're actually decoupling those. We're going to use the great backend admin experience of WordPress, and we're going to use a modern front end development workflow with Gatsby to actually build the site. So let's keep rolling on this. Marcin, this should work for existing WordPress installations. Depending on what plugins you've installed, you may have to do some additional development to work with it. But what's nice is that we're just going to use the generated content. So as long as your plugins generate regular HTML out of the content and aren't doing really, it really depends on what they do. It will work. You may have to do some extra work to get all of the things that you expected. Webinar.lwj.dev is in fact a real domain. If you go and visit this URL, it works. It's live. So we can, what else? Let's see. Does it work with a site hosted with WordPress.com? I'm not sure because I don't know if we can install the WP GraphQL plugin. But if you can install WP GraphQL, then 100% it will work with that WordPress site. Can you sync the uploads folder with all the resized images to the CDN? I will talk about how that works a little bit, but the short answer is sort of. The WordPress stuff gets pulled in and processed by Gatsby, which is then synced to the CDN, but it's not like, it doesn't get pulled back into WordPress. Let's see here. Just going through these questions to make sure I'm not leaving anybody behind. Am I going to use advanced custom fields? I'm not. However, that doesn't mean you can't. You can absolutely use advanced custom fields. It's just out of scope for what we're doing today. Let's see. Could I run the WordPress site in Docker on my dev laptop? Yes, 100%. The challenge though would be that if you run the WordPress site locally on your laptop, the only way you can build and publish your site is from your laptop because the Netlify build system won't have access to your local machine. So it would work, but it would restrict you to where you can. It'll restrict you to where you can actually manage, like where you can build the site from. Something more complicated with a custom configuration. So for that particular question, I have a whole workshop coming up on this. Let's go to, let's see, it's, what is it? Workshop, JAMstack Fast Track. This is a full workshop on how to do that is going to go a little more in depth. This one is going to be full day. You can also check out that front end masters course. Whoops. The front end masters course that I linked above in the chat is going to cover that as well. So let's go ahead and get this WordPress stuff rolling here. Let's see. The reason that I'm using WP GraphQL over the REST API is that it has a really tight integration with Gatsby because Gatsby uses GraphQL. So this is going to make life a lot easier in terms of straight integration. The WP GraphQL plugin is also a little more full featured. The REST API is very good. The GraphQL API has some additional polish on top of the REST API that makes life a little bit easier. Front-end Masters and Egghead are two different systems. So Front-end Masters is a live video workshop, and Egghead is a kind of self-guided, compact video lessons. they're not as workshopy. They're more like demonstration. The courses are not the same either. The Egghead stuff is different than the front end master stuff. They cover slightly different. It's all JAMstack, so it all kind of relates, but it's different material. So let's get things installed here. I'm going to first, let's see. We're in our site, and I need to figure out where we actually are. So I need to get into the actual site, which is, let's see, here. And then I need to go into, is it in home? I should have looked this part up. I think I do know this somewhere. Where was it? All right, give me just a second while I hunt down where this is actually placed. I think it's dev. Nope. We need. Is it under user? Nope. Under user share. Wait, is it? I appreciate y'all helping me out here. HTML. That's the one. Oh, good. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. I would have been here all day. Let's get into the HTML. And so now I'm going to get into the WP content and plugins, right? And then once I'm in here, I already have, we already got Git as part of Media Temple. So I'm going to git clone, and I only need one commit. I just need the most recent version, and I only need a single branch. And then I'm going to get the github.com/WP GraphQL, WP GraphQL.git. And that's going to put this plugin into our plugins directory so that we can use it. And then I also want WP Graph IQL, graphical, which will let us view the queries inside of our WordPress site. Now that's the last that we're going to need for our WordPress site. We should be set up now. So if I go and I look here and I look in my plugins, I can now see that I've got WP GraphQL and WP Graphical in here. So I'm going to activate both of these. All right, so now down in the bottom left, I've got graphical. And I can run a query where I just want to go down the side. Let's say I want to get my pages and I want to get the nodes. That's the actual pages themselves. And inside of these, I'm going to get, let's start with just the title. Great. So here's our pages, right? And then if I want to get more of that, I can go and get the content. And so the content comes out as the encoded or the HTML processed content, not like the raw WordPress content. And we're doing that very specifically because if we get the raw content like this, then we'd have to parse it. We'd have to process it all and make it work, which is not really what we want. So instead, we're just going to get the standard process, and then we can just use that as is. So now we can actually start building our site. So let's do this, and I'm going to create a new Gatsby site. I have I'm going to exit here. Now we're back on my own site, and I have opened this into this folder. This is an empty folder. So I'm going to create a new Gatsby site, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use npx, which allows me to execute a global command without actually having to globally install it. I'm going to use the Gatsby CLI, run new, and I'm just going to put it in this folder. So just use the dot for current folder. And then I want to use the Gatsby starter hello world, which is going to make sure that we don't get any extra stuff. So it's just going to give us a new Gatsby site with no bells and whistles right in this folder. And while we're waiting for that to install, I'll try to answer some questions. See, I already answered that one. So You need ACF or WPML for elements which are usually part of modern CMS systems such as Craft or Prismic. That is true. If you want to do, I mean, you can build custom blocks in WordPress now, which will give you a lot of flexibility, but in general, yeah, you've got to do some extra stuff. So what we're doing here is we are exposing our WordPress features as APIs. So what we just did with this here is we've made it now so that from wherever we want to, we can query our site and we get the content of the site. So whatever's publicly available at our webinar.lwj.dev, we are now able to query that and use it elsewhere. So that's what we're going to do with Gatsby. So once this is done and we can see that everything is building in now, we're almost there. Then let's start installing some things. So I'm going to yarn add Gatsby source GraphQL so that we can use the GraphQL that WordPress is giving us. And let's see here. So one thing that you got to do, you got to use the Q&A. The chat's moving too fast for me to keep up. So if you've got a question you want me to answer, you gotta put it in the Q&A. I won't be able to keep up with the chat. So a trade-off of a database-based CMS like WordPress versus a Git-based CMS like Forestry, it's the way that you access it, right? Like you have to, in order to use a Git-based CMS like Forestry, you have to have people go in and use like Git. So if it's you as an individual developer, like for me personally, I totally use, I 100% just use Git. I use Gatsby with Markdown or MDX specifically, and that's great for me. But for, I have another site that has people who aren't developers maintaining it. And for that one, I use Sanity. And, I have another one that I run for a client, and that one is a WordPress site. So it's all about who's using it and what their level of comfort and preferences are. So what I'm doing now is I have installed the WordPress, or sorry, the Gatsby source GraphQL. And in Gatsby config.js, I'm going to configure that so that we can use it. And what I'm doing is I'm telling Gatsby that what we want to use the Gatsby source GraphQL plugin. That's what resolve means. And then I'm going to pass in some options. The options that I want to pass in is a type name. So this is just something internal that gets used to make sure that it's unique. We're going to give it a field name. This is where everything is going to be nested so that we know how we avoid naming conflicts and everything. And then we give it a URL. So the URL is going to be our WordPress site and /GraphQL. Okay, so now if I run this yarn develop, while we're waiting for that to start, let's see. At work, we have a bunch of sites that are WordPress. Any suggestions on how to pitch the JAMstack to clients who know WordPress? For clients who know WordPress, there will be no functional change for them because it's going to continue to work. The benefit here, and the reason this is so powerful, is that you are going to have a much faster time. Like the people who visit the site will be notably faster, and the people who work on the site, the front-end developers, will be able to do things much more quickly. So that is, those are like the two major benefits that you're going to see. I'm personally I'm a pretty big fan of oh wait, something went wrong. Are we just not done yet? What's going on here? Unexpected token. Did I mess my... webinar.lwj.dev. Get this wrong? https webinar.lwj.dev/GraphQL. Extra comma after URL. That shouldn't be a problem. This is JavaScript, not JSON. Type name, field name, URL. Okay. So I have done something wrong here. Let's see, let's do all file. Let's just make sure that Gatsby is cooperating. Get anything directory. Okay. Resolve options, type name, field name, URL. Okay, so we've installed everything. Let's check if anything needs to be updated. We'll just upgrade all of our dependencies just in case. It really shouldn't care about that, that trailing URL, but let's see, webinar.lwj.dev/GraphQL. And it just says it didn't find that. Did I forget to turn something on? Let's go look. Tools, let's go to plugins. Okay, this is active. So this would have to be querying from, it's not like here, is it? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this this other site that I know works because I think I might have misconfigured something. So let's just try this again. And that runs Gatsby develop, which is going to start up our servers. Let's see if it's still. What is going on today? This is, I guess it's the curse of live code, right? Something's always going to go wrong. Has this whole site gone down? What is? Oh, I typoed it is why. We're going to put this one here. All right, we're going to get there. Everybody stick with me. We're making progress. Let's go. So we've got our site here, and that one is cooperating. So I think I must have misconfigured something. I would check the check that URL or that tutorial that I wrote, and this is going to walk through all the steps. I probably just, as trying to answer questions and everything, just missed one. But so now we're looking at WP GraphQL, and we can see here that we've got access to all of these things. We've got the posts, pages. So let's look at pages, nodes, and then we can get the title and the content. And there we go. We now have our title and content for these pages. And so what that means is now that we've got that, we can start rolling through and actually building some stuff from this. So I'm gonna set up an actual query that we need for what we want to do. I'm gonna get the URI, which is the page that or the generated slug. I'm getting the content, and then I'm gonna get whether or not it's the front page. And the reason I care whether or not it's the front page is that we're going to have a slightly different layout for the front page. So with that, we can now copy this query, and I don't need the name, so I'm just going to keep it like this. All right, I'm going to copy that out, and then I'm going to create some pages for my WordPress content. So let's go and do that. The first thing is I'm going to, in my source folder, you can see here that like by default, everything in Gatsby is just a React component. So what I want to do is I want to create a template, and I'm going to call this page template. And we're going to import React from React. And then we will create a new component. We're going to call it page template, give it props, and then we're going to return just whatever we get. We'll stringify it. And then we'll export that as our default. Okay. And then we need to use this, right? So we're going to create a file down here called Gatsby node so we can hook into the Gatsby node APIs. And inside of this, we're going to export a function called create pages, which is our API hook. We're going to use async await because it cleans up the workflow a little bit. And then that gives us two utilities that Gatsby will pass in. One is an actions object, which includes a bunch of little helper functions. And then GraphQL is so that we can make a call to the GraphQL layer. So we'll start by getting our GraphQL. And I'm just going to paste that query directly in. Make that look a little bit easier. Okay, good. And then let me collapse this down so you can actually see what's going on. So we've got our create pages. We're using the GraphQL call, and we're going to await that so that we don't have to do a .then chain. And then for this one in particular, I'm actually only going to be doing a little bit. I'll show you what I'm going to use, and then I'll edit this query. So we're going to start with the pages. We'll do a result.data.wp GraphQL, and you can see what's happening here. Result, and then result gives us back data. The whole query gets packed up in data. And then we go WP GraphQL, pages, nodes, and whatever I need. So we're going to go WP GraphQL, pages, nodes, right? And that's our list of pages. Then we can loop through these. So for each page, I want to use the create page action, and we want to set the path to be the same as the URI that came in from WordPress. And then for the component, I want to use that template we just made. So we're going to require resolve and grab source templates, page template. And for the context, I want to be able to look this page up. So I don't actually need the content or the title or whether or not it's the front page, because all we're actually going to do is send this data in and then do a query for that page data in the template itself. So let's actually swap this out for an ID. And I'm going to change this to be ID is page.id. Okay. And that's it. Like that's all we need. So from here, we can now, if we swap this server out, I'm going to stop it and I'll start it again so that we pick up the new Gatsby node file. And we can see that we've built 4 pages. So let's go back out here and let's look at localhost 8000. And we've got our hello world, but let's look at like about. Okay, cool. So this is building pages for us. And this is just dumping our props, but we can see in here that we've got the ID that was passed in. And that's really what we need. That means that we can look up the actual file. So let's see here. There are a bunch of questions here. I'm trying to stay on time because we want to wrap up in about the next 15 minutes. So let me power through the core concepts, and then we'll go back and do some Q&A just to make sure that we don't run way over on time. So once we have our pages loading, we're going to write another GraphQL query that will give us the actual content. And in Gatsby, we can do this right here. So I'm going to import GraphQL from Gatsby, right? And then I'm going to export a constant called query. It doesn't matter what it's called, but it does matter that it's exported. And then we GraphQL tag that. It's a tag template literal. And inside, we're going to use this ID. Anything that gets passed into props in this, this page context, we can access as a GraphQL variable. So I'm going to just grab that as, let's see, it's an ID. And then we want to do WP GraphQL page, and we're going to filter to just the page that we actually want. And we want to get the title and content. Okay. And once I save this, we can come back out here and look. And now we have this data prop that showed up. And inside we've got WP GraphQL, page, and our title and content. So we're now actually building a WordPress page based on this, based on our WordPress stuff in Gatsby. So let's rewrite our page template to actually show that. So I'm going to grab out the page data, and that'll be data. Let's see. We can just destructure this because it's all we really need is the data. So let's do the data, and then we'll get WP GraphQL page. And again, what we're doing is we get data, WP GraphQL, and then page. We just drill right into that GraphQL object. And then in here, I'm going to set up a React fragment. Inside of that, we will set dangerously set inner HTML. Now, we're doing this because WordPress has already processed this content. It is not necessarily a bad thing to use dangerously set inner HTML. It just means that we trust the content. So because we know that our WordPress site is generating this content, and because theoretically speaking, all of the escaping should be done already, then we should be okay to use this. And that's, that's just a choice that we make here, is to trust that WordPress is doing its job. So now we're actually seeing our content. And if I go to a 404 page, it'll give us a list and development of the pages that exist. So I can go to the home page. And now notice this home page is showing me the wrong thing. And the reason is that Gatsby's templates take precedence over generated content. So let me get rid of this, and I'll stop and start it. And now, once this is done, say success here. Okay. Now we've got our home page, right? So I can move back and forth now. Let's go here. So I can go to my about page. Okay, that's the content from WordPress. Go to my home page. That's the content from WordPress. Blog is still empty though. So we're still gonna have to add that part. So the first thing that we probably wanna do though is we wanna make this kind of look less terrible. So let's add a quick shared layout. So I'm gonna create a component. We'll go into source, components, layout.js. And inside of this, we're gonna import React from React. We will import link from Gatsby, which is how we do internal links. Oh geez, get out of there. All right. And then I can create a layout component. That's going to get children. So we can just put whatever we want inside of it and it'll get rendered. And we will return a fragment. And inside of our fragment, we will have a header. That header is going to link to the home page. And we will give that a class name of home. I don't think I'm going to actually write any CSS here just to save time. So we'll go WordPress to the JAMstack, and then down here, we'll set up main and we'll stick the children in there so that we can actually render this. And then I need to export that as our default. And we can go into our page template and import that. So let's import layout from components layout. And instead of using a fragment, we can use the layout. And so now when we go to our homepage, we have a little bit of content there, right? That's pretty good. So it's not going to win any design awards, but it is going to do the job for now. So for basic styles, I'm going to copy paste some styles so that we don't have to watch me write CSS, which no, I don't think anybody wants that. So let's go to styles layout.css. I'm going to paste this in, and then right in our layout component, I can just import this. So we'll import styles layout.css, and now the styles are applied. So that's really all there is to it with CSS and Gatsby. There are a million different solutions. You can use your you can do CSS modules, you can do CSS and JS, you can do plain CSS like we just did. All those options are available there. So then now we want to create a page component. So I can actually like copy paste this basically, because what we want is we want to do almost exactly the same thing, but we're going to swap this out for being a post instead of a page. So let's do post, right? And And it really is that straightforward. What we're doing here is just taking posts and pages. And then I also need to create pages in Gatsby node from our posts. So in here, I can use the same query. So I can just change this over to be posts. And then down below, I can duplicate this whole set and we'll do the same thing, posts. And inside of this, instead of being just the URI, we're going to use blog as a prefix for those. And then we're going to use the post template and make sure that we use the post object, right? Okay, so now if I stop and restart, our blog post should build too. Okay, so that's going. Let's take a look here and see what happened. Let me go to this 404 page so that we can get a list of all of our pages that were created. Hey, look at that. We've got blog posts. All right, so that is pretty powerful. So the next thing that we can do is we want to make sure that our block styles work. So let's take a look at, like, here we've got this WordPress JAMstack. So if we look at WordPress JAMstack.lwj.dev, we can see that on this blog, we've got this post that has this, this kind of block style. It uses the WordPress block style. So I want to be able to just pull those in, but I don't want to have to rewrite those styles for everything. So instead, what I can do is I can actually just install yarn add WordPress block library. And then in my layout file here, I can import WordPress block library build style.css. And that's going to be the actual block styles. So once I've saved this, I can yarn develop. And what we'll see is that those styles get picked up and the WordPress styles for blocks will get auto applied. And this is really nice, right? You can do, like, oh, what did I mess up? Can't resolve WordPress block library build style. Did I typo? Build style.css, not styles. Okay. So now the block quote is applied. There you go. So we have a nice, easy, like, we've done very little actual coding and we're rendering an actual blog here. So let's build a page to actually show our blog previews. So I'm going to, using Gatsby's pages setup, we're going to do pages blog.js. And we can import React from React, import GraphQL and link from Gatsby. We'll also import our layout so that we don't have to rewrite any of those styles. Okay, and then I'm going to export const query, and that's going to be a GraphQL query. And we want to get WP GraphQL posts nodes, and then I want the ID, the title, the URI, and the excerpt from each post, right? So we're getting all the posts, and these are the details that I want. And then down here, I can define our, let's hide that. I can define our component. That's going to get a data prop, which is the result of the query. And I'm going to pull out the posts. Those will be data.wp graphql.posts.nodes. And then I'm going to return layout, and we'll do posts.map. And for each post, we're going to render a component. So I'm going to do just a regular article. And to make sure that React knows which one is which, we're going to add a key that's the post ID. Inside, we're going to use a heading 2. And we'll use the link component. And that is going to link to blog. And then we'll use the post URI, right, to match what we did. And then dangerously set inner HTML. And we can set the HTML to the post.title. And then we've got our H2 down here. So I'm going to grab this so that we don't have to duplicate a bunch of typing. I'm going to change it into a div. And we're going to use the post.excerpt. Okay, so now that this exists, I should be able to go to straight up blog. Oh, I typoed something. I have to export is why. So let's export default blog. Okay. And it still doesn't like something that I did. Oh, I spelled import wrong. I bet y'all caught that already. Yep, thank you. I think it needs to run this query. So let's stop and start. And not read hosts of undefined, which means I have typoed something. So let's use my favorite debugging method. We'll just go into the GraphQL Explorer, run the query. Okay, there it is. So the query works, which means that I screwed something else up. WP GraphQL. Jeez, that's a tricky typo. Now that we're out here, we've got this one, and there's our post. So now we can actually navigate around a little bit. So we're almost there. We're very, very close. The next couple of things, let's see, we are just about out of time. So I'm going to skip a couple things. We can also load using the WordPress dashboard. Like if we go in here and look, there is general settings. Like we can load these things. We can load these out and use them in our Gatsby site. We can also load out things like our menus and make sure that our menus are being used. So let's actually do that part because I feel like that one's really important. Let's grab that out. So I'm going to get the menu name, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to go into the Explorer and I'm going to run this query here. So I'm going to go to the WP GraphQL. I want to get the WordPress menus, and then I want its ID and its name. So let's run that. Okay. So the main menu is the one that I want. I'm going to get this ID, and in the ID, we're going to use this ID. And I kind of took a shortcut here to hard code it, but it's fine. So I'm going to use static query, which is a way to run a GraphQL query in place. I'm going to use GraphQL there. And then up at the top, I'm going to grab the menu as use static query. And then we'll use the GraphQL tag. And inside, I can query WP GraphQL general settings. And then I want to get the title and the URL. And then I also want to get the menu ID, and we'll get the that ID that I dropped in. So then we can get menu items, nodes, ID, label, and URL. And that will now give us our menu data up here. And so I can get we'll just destructure out the title, and the URL will come out of menu.wp GraphQL.menu items, nodes, map, and then I'm just kind of, this is like a quick and dirty way to do this because what we're trying to get is the URL that removes the full URL out. So I'm going to get the item.url, and we're going to replace URL with, oops. And the reason that I'm doing that is that WordPress is going to give us the full, it's going to give us the full like HTTP URL, and we don't want that. We just want the relative one. So I'm going to find that full URL and just replace it. And then down below, I can set this actually, okay, so we are going to use the settings. We can set that to be the title, and then I can add a link here to loop through our menu items, and we'll link, give it a key of the item.url, just something unique, and we're going to link to the item.url. Inside, we'll use the item.label, and once we save this and go back out to our site, something blew up on me. Which was, oh, I know what I did wrong. So the part that I got wrong here is that we actually need, need to duplicate this part, and this needs to come out of general settings. Then we get the items. So that's just me unable to read my own stuff. So now we actually have a menu, right? So we're fully controlling our site by using WordPress. And then if I come out here I can't do it because I don't remember how to log into that WordPress site right now because we had to switch over to the other one. But if we change the menu in WordPress and rebuild the site, the menu will change here as well. But that is a really powerful way to do things. So if we want to deploy this to Netlify, now what we can do is we've got our whole site here. I can git add all, right? So now we've got the site that we've built. It's got our Gatsby config where we add the GraphQL plugin, the node where we create the posts and pages, our general layout, a blog page to show our individual blogs, our general styles, and then templates for page and post pages. So I can commit this and we'll say migrate a WordPress site to the JAMstack. Okay. And then we're going to create a repo. I'm using the Hub CLI tools to make this nice and fast. So once I have that, I can git push update origin master. Okay. And then I'm going to use the Netlify CLI to init. And I'm going to create and configure a new site. We're going to put it in my personal team. We'll call this WP webinar. And we're going to do yarn build. We want to deploy public because that's where Gatsby builds files to. And we will now Netlify open. All right, and I need to log in. I think I'm logged in. Definitely not logged in. Okay, let me pull this up on my other browser so that this is faster. Go here. Here's WP webinar. It is now building our site. And while we're waiting for that, let's answer some questions. Does WP GraphQL support shortcodes on an existing WordPress site? I believe yes, because I believe that it's just grabbing the results of WordPress's the content function. So it should work. Questions. Will you have to update the site when Gatsby source WordPress before comes out? That's a great question for the Gatsby team. Honestly, I don't know if they're planning on breaking changes. I believe that they've been working really hard to not have breaking changes, but that's not something I can answer. Images within post content will be placed within Gatsby static folder, yes, because the WordPress site will pull the images down and process them using Gatsby's image processing. However, I don't have time to do that today, so that'll be kind of an exercise for you. But check it out. Like, this site is live, so in the span of about an hour, we were able to create a new WordPress site, get it set up with WP GraphQL so that we have a GraphQL API for it, and then build a new Gatsby site that has all of our content on it from WordPress, including the WordPress block styles that are being pulled from WordPress's actual source code. So let me. All right. So have I jamified WooCommerce? There are ways to do WooCommerce. WooCommerce has APIs where you can create orders and stuff. One of the ways that I've seen that's really cool is you can use JavaScript and Stripe's checkout And then with a webhook, once the Stripe checkout completes, make a call to WooCommerce's API to create an order, that like a paid order for the person. That's a really cool way to do it. Do you need to know React for using Gatsby? I mean, it certainly helps. Like you don't strictly need to. You can learn Gatsby and like the React requirements for Gatsby without ever needing to learn the underlying React stuff. But it's going to help. Like the more you know your tools, the easier your life is going to be. I think is a general, like just a general truism. But strictly speaking, no, you can just use Gatsby tutorials and you'll be able to get through the React that you need. Will this format the shortcodes? It will sort of format the shortcode. So it will bring you the HTML, but you would still need to figure out how to bring in the styles for it. Can this work with pages built using page builders like Elementor, WP Page Builder, and the rest? Unfortunately, I have not used either of those, so I can't answer that question, unfortunately. Jason Ball on Twitter, however, he probably knows the answer to that. So I will give you his information. He works at Gatsby and is also a maintainer. Well, that was helpful. Yeah. All right. So he's here, Jason Ball. So go follow him and ask him because he will know those things. Let's see. What do I think about Jekyll? I think Jekyll's cool. I think you should use the generator that makes the most sense for you. Like Jekyll is powered by Ruby. Hugo is powered by Go. I used to have a Hugo site, and what I found was I didn't know enough Go to be useful with it. Is there a managed service for this WordPress to static site? There are a couple options that are out there that promise to do it. I haven't tried any of them, but if you Google around for it, you can find a few that do that. Will this recording be available for download? I don't know if it's available for download, but it's definitely available for rewatch. If you want to use a REST API instead of GraphQL, you definitely can, but you're going to find yourself hand rolling a little more of the queries and page creation stuff. You could use Jekyll with this setup. Again, you're going to find yourself kind of in like hand rolling territory. If you want to use Jekyll, one thing that might be worth looking at is actually Eleventy, because Eleventy is like plain, it's like plain content management, but it feels very it feels very good in terms of like being able to write a little bit and get a lot of results. Very Jekyll-like in that way. But yeah, Jekyll should work. You can definitely use WooCommerce with Gatsby. There are APIs for that. Clients can preview pages. There are several options for that. Like you can do, I think Gatsby has a service that'll let you do live previews. We have something at Netlify called deploy previews, where like if you create a branch, we'll build a version of that. You can also have like a simplified version of the WordPress site where people can preview content. That is definitely something that you would need to evaluate on like exactly what your use case is before you committed. My VS Code theme is called Night Owl. It's built by Sarah Drasner. I have a list about all the fonts and colors and all that stuff listed at jason.af/uses. Netlify CMS would be enough. Yeah, so Netlify CMS would totally work in a lot of cases. Like if you're interested in Netlify CMS, you should totally check it out. There are some really good options there. Let's see, on here, I've actually done an episode on this. So Netlify CMS. This is kind of a cool episode if you're into that sort of thing. And then let's see. I don't want to write a lot of JS. There are definitely Gatsby starters that will do most of this for you. There's one made by Alexandra Spalato, Gatsby WordPress, that is really, really full featured. Trying to figure out where, let's see. I can't remember what I think it's in here, maybe. Yeah, so I don't remember exactly where it is, but check her stuff out or hit her up. She's built a really full-featured Gatsby theme for WordPress. Oh, Gatsby WP themes, probably, maybe. That's probably the one. But this is a whole service that's kind of dedicated to that. So yeah, I would definitely check that out. If you're not super comfortable with JavaScript though, like Gatsby is it's a JavaScript framework, so it is going to expect that you do write some. I already talked about the preview mode. A command transcript would be super helpful. The article that I wrote on Netlify's blog goes through this in entirety, and a little bit more that we didn't have time to get to today, and also goes into a little more detail as well, because we were going real fast today. So let me close that up. All right, so is there a lower concern for keeping WordPress plugins and everything up to date if the site is server-side rendered? So one of the big benefits that I didn't really touch on here is that when you are rendering your site as a like a static site through Netlify, there is no, like, if we look at the code that got generated, let's actually do this. I'm going to run yarn build, and we can take a look at the actual code in the public folder. So what comes out here is like just HTML. So we're talking about, like, here's my about page and its index, and that content is here. And nowhere in this public folder, which is the only thing that goes online, is there any reference to the WordPress URLs, any reference to the database, no access to the server. So the only thing that somebody could do if they were to like hack this site is they could deface this site. But as soon as you do another build, it'll upload over the top of it and it goes away. Or you could roll back using the rollback feature to stand up like a previous deploy. So we've only got one here, so I can't show you how that works. But yeah, this is very, it's like really good for security. Automated when a post page is published, 100% yes, it can. I didn't have time to cover that today, but it's in the bottom of the Netlify article that I linked. Can I share my, yeah, I shared my VS Code. It's jason.af/uses. Plain text and HTML, WordPress renders and looks good. You would need to look at what WordPress renders, because you're basically going to get the results of the content from WordPress. So you can work around that. You can write custom parsers, but in general, whatever WordPress's the content produces is what you're going to get in Gatsby. I don't have any experience with WP Bakery, Elementor, or Oxygen, so unfortunately, I don't have any opinion on how they behave in comparison. Let's see, what else do we have here? Pages are being pulled from WordPress at build time. So the rebuild is relatively cheap. Like if you've ever stood up a WordPress site that goes across like a bunch of nodes and has a varnish cache and is like aggressively cached, the time to clear that cache is typically about as long as the time to rebuild the Gatsby site. So in like effectively in terms of how quickly content goes live, it's going to be about the same. And you can optimize your builds in a lot of different ways to cut that down. That's a little out of scope for what we're talking about today, but it's definitely something that can be done. You could also, if you wanted to, you could set up some JavaScript that would poll for new content every couple of seconds. You could even set up like a live server and use WebSockets to push content. But that's, in my opinion, that is almost always overkill. It's like very little content needs to be up to the second live. If you are publishing informational content, like a few minutes delay to get it live is almost never a problem. There are ways to work around that when it is a problem. You know, if you've got a very specific, like the sale launches on this date, or we're selling a very limited quantity of things and they need to be unavailable as soon as they sell out, for sure, you should 100%, you'll write some client-side stuff for that. And you end up writing client-side stuff for that anyways, because otherwise somebody could open the site on a server rendered site, leave it open, and then click the button after things were out of stock. So you're still going to have to write that client-side thing to automatically update when it goes out of stock, right? So this doesn't really change the paradigm. It just changes where the work is done. Instead of the work being done on a server after somebody requests it, it gets done ahead of time and then pushed out to a CDN And the lead time again is about the same as like clearing a varnish cache. How do you process in Gatsby the images from WordPress? That is actually built in. It uses something called Sharp that will that'll load all the images in, create responsive versions, downsample, all that good stuff. Let's see. I'm not gonna be able to answer all these questions because we are definitely out of time here. But let me skim for any that I really want to cover. Let's see. The front end for the original WordPress site still exists. Yeah. So the way that you would prevent that is you would just remove the theme. You could just put up a WordPress theme that basically dumps all the content, or you could put the whole thing behind a password if you wanted, which is another great way to do that. Good practices for caching requests and hardening the GraphQL endpoint. Follow WordPress best practices. I mean, the easiest way would be don't let that be a public endpoint, like put it behind auth. But that's really up to you. Like you could use basic auth, which would deter a lot of nonsense. And because it doesn't need to be a public WordPress URL, you can make that work. Is it possible to use an approach like this with Netlify's redirect proxy rules to migrate a site one piece at a time? Absolutely. I just did a show on this yesterday with Ramin from our solutions engineering team, and it was awesome. Let me see. It's not live yet. What was it? Here? Nope. Well, I'll have to tweet that. If you follow twitter.com/LWJ show. This is a live stream show that I do. We've got one coming up actually in like not very long, like very soon. Wait, when does it start? Yeah, it starts in like 3 minutes. So I gotta wrap up here. But yeah, so that will go through the show I just did with Ramin. We'll go through how to do the temporary or the gradual proxy based redirects for individual pages. Let's see. Why I chose Gatsby instead of Next.js. Gatsby does fully static. Next requires Lambda functions, and well, it doesn't require, but there's a lot of just, I don't know. It's honestly, it just comes down to personal preference. Let's see. So definitely check in this article down at the bottom. We do cover how to do. Where is it? Here. There's a section in here on how to automatically trigger new deploys whenever changes are made in WordPress. So go check that article. But yeah, so that is, I believe, everything that we need. Oops. Let me make sure I send this to everybody. Yeah, and I think we are good. So I believe that's it, right? Like unfortunately I'm out of time, so I got to roll. But thank you all so much for watching. Please hit me up. I'm on Twitter at @JLangsdorff. And if you want to come ask follow-up questions there, you can absolutely send me a tweet. I will happily reply. And if you want to come watch the Learn with Jason show, that is going to go live in about 10 minutes. So that will be at https://twitch.tv/JLangsdorff. Thanks, y'all. So we will see you, I don't know, next time, I guess. Nate, did you want to take back over?
Yeah, I just thank you so much, Jason. I hope that was helpful for everybody. And we will be sending an email after this with a link to the recording, as well as links to a lot of the resources that Jason used today. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks again, Jason. And again, we'll see y'all next time.